Week 9 and feeling fine. And man, this week has already been a doozy. 41 total points between 4 teams on Tuesday. Kennesaw State with a big upset over Liberty on Wednesday. And then Syracuse looking like a Conference USA team on Thursday. I mean, it doesn't get any better than how the week's already gone in college football. Welcome to the College Football Show. We're here for Week 9. SHIPIT Nation. My name's Bill. Put $1 in front of it. You'll find me on Twitter and Discord. And we're ready for another solid weekend of college football. Last weekend was fun. I mean, a lot of good games, some upsets, I think my favorite game to watch was just Baylor. Just beat the tar out of Texas Tech. I don't know why that game was so fun for me. It was nice to just sit down and watch college football, especially without the Gophers playing. But we're here ready for another week, and we're still pushing for 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. We're inching closer and closer every day. Why not join the greatest nation on YouTube for free? You'll get notified for every single video. You can be more involved in some of the chats, and we're going to do something special for our subscribers when we do get to 10,000. So you're definitely going to want to be a part of that. As far as DraftKings goes this week, they nerfed the main contest from what I saw on Saturday. So it's almost a third to first now. Again, still, 50,000 up top. It's a lottery. Your chances of winning are extremely low in their negative EV contests in the long run. But somebody's got to win them, right? So if you can afford to, go for it. There's also a $44 20 max. The structure is a lot better. I like all the 20 maxes. Most of those structures are usually good. Single entry and cash are my cup of tea because they have the best payout structures, except for this guy, because it's rake free. Touchdown Hoedown Listener League, SHIPIT Nation. It's just, we don't pay DraftKings anything. Everything you pay in comes right back out to us. 400 entries, $500 up top. And Rabbit is pretty happy he entered last week. And Zakamu and C Neighbors. Look at all those SHIPIT Nation flags up at the top. It's always a little better to promote when you have your own flag at the top of your own contest, right? But now who's going to come take us down? And look at me. Look, I'm inching closer and closer every week. This is getting better. So get in soon before I start getting real good at these GPP things. Anywho, let's get on to this week without further ado. And we have maybe one of the most intriguing games on the slate to start with. Notre Dame and Navy being played at MetLife Stadium, so a neutral site. And Navy's undefeated. This is like probably their best shot against Notre Dame that they've had in a long time. Notre Dame, we kind of know what to expect. Riley Leonard's probably going to run, but when he throws, it's probably going to Bo Collins. The whole love Price, but Price is loved. I don't remember what I said last week. I'm not even going to try again. I don't know if I can do it again, but Jadarian Price is still 3,200. Jeremiah Love still getting a bulk of the work, but, he 2-1 basically in carries, but Price is going to see enough field. It's just, what do you want to pay if you are going to go to this backfield? And then on the Navy side, you guys, they're throwing the ball. And Eli Heidenreich is technically a running back. I think he might actually be listed at fullback, but he is the target monster by Navy's terms. He's getting like 5 targets a game. So it's Horvath and it's Heidenreich. And again, it's a negative, game script for Navy, but I think personally, I'm just going to enjoy this football game. I don't know that I'm going to touch it as from a DFS standpoint. Notre Dame's just kind of priced right. Might take a shot on Collins, but it's tough, especially when you have the game right after it here with Tulane and North Texas. 8-point spread. Tulane with a 37.5 implied team total. North Texas 29.5 point implied team total. So these are some big numbers. This is a big game for a group of 5 playoff implications. So everybody's going to be juiced up. Not juiced up. Don't do that. We don't want. Oh man, I can't even think of who just got. Oh, Jamison Williams, NFL. That's why I couldn't think of it. It's not college football. Anyway, it's going to be a good game. Hopefully, from a DFS perspective, the way it's Vegas pegs it is going to be good for us. On the Tulane side, the first thing I noticed is how underpriced Mensa is. He's the quarterback of the team. He's got a solid floor. Like he only needs 15 for 3x and 5x, 6x with this team total isn't out of the question. At 5K, you're definitely giving him a look. Mekhi Hughes is underpriced for his output. He's had some big, like he was even running the ball against Kansas State. You think he can't run it against North Texas? I'm not concerned about Mekhi Hughes here. He's definitely one of my first looks in all formats. This wide receiver room is a little bit more peculiar. Mario Williams has been the target monster. He's been the stud. He's had a couple of up and down games recently. to where he just kind of disappears and then he'll spike. But, last game he still had 9 targets. The unfortunate thing is that he dropped 4 of them. He got pegged with 4 drops in the stat book. So that's never pretty. Fleming is a guy who's going to spike now and again. Yulkeith Brown is on the field a ton. Bryce Bohannon after Kennesaw State. Yeah, why wouldn't you love a guy with the last name Bohannon? Who them owls? I don't know what their saying is, but it was who. But Alex Bowman, we're going to have to watch his status. He's questionable. So, if you're looking for a cheap option, he's on the field quite a bit too. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now on the North Texas side, Chandler Morris, the TCU transfer, is basically like you expect 30 points from him at this point. And the game script supports it here. Tulane's probably the toughest defense they've faced all year, but the recently teams have been getting them through the air. When they played like Kansas State earlier in the season and some of those bigger schools, a few of those teams could run. But North Texas ain't those bigger schools. So we're looking at the pass game here. The running game, they're cheap is about all I can say about them. Porter is going to get a decent amount of the run just because Ragsdale and Harris have been out. So McGill and Sibley are involved, but it's really Porter if you're really getting gross with this game. But Sheffield, if you love Chandler Morris, you love Sheffield because he's his favorite target. 14 targets the last 2 games and 6 TDs in the last 4 games. I don't know what's not to love about that. 7,000 for he underpriced for what he's done. The disrespect of the group of 5 teams on this slate is pretty apparent. If DraftKings is going to put these teams on the slate, they really should respect what their production is in terms of DFS, even if they're not a Power 5 team or Power 4 team. Stupid Pac-12. Those are my thoughts on it. That's a whole nother video that we can get into that discussion. But the next thing I see in this UNT is Houston transfer Dalton Carnes. And for those of you who have been with us on the Degenerate 75 side, before we joined SHIPIT Nation, that last year we had a very lengthy discussion about a min-price Dalton Carnes who was making every single lineup work, and we pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think he had like 4 catches for 40 yards, but 8 points was all we needed. So he holds a special place in my heart. The other, Damon Ward's status is up in the air. Nick Rempert is min-price, and he's been starting for him. So that's something to look at. But honestly, Wyatt Young, sides, a lot of guys get targets on this team. Obviously Blair Conright's up there too. It's kind of like not quite a USC situation because Sheffield is the clear number 1, but it does get pretty spread out after that. It's just the pricing compared to Sheffield, they're priced like it. If I were to call this a P4 team, Sheffield would probably be closer to 8K, and these next 2 guys would probably be like 5K receivers, just for perspective. And now on to a game that we don't need to talk about much. Oklahoma at Ole Miss. We were supposed to go to this game or talked about it, but it's going to be a stinker. So I don't know if we are. I don't think we are, unless we get a hair up our butt. But Oklahoma, a 20-point underdog on the road. Jackson Arnold starting again. Joe Barnes is still leading the backfield. Gavin Sawchuk is doubtful. Here's your annual weekly Oklahoma out list. Jaden Gibson, Jaleel Farouk, Nick Anderson, Angelo Anthony. Doubtful, like I said, Gavin Sawchuk. And Deion Burks has been downgraded to doubtful. Might as well be outful, honestly, at this point. It doesn't really matter. Maybe Jackson Arnold gets a fire under him and he, lights it up early. But it's a tough defense. It's on the road. I don't see it. On the Ole Miss side, they're priced up. Jackson Dart's really expensive. He hasn't really gotten there, especially lately. He has like 3 sub-20-point games or something. And Oklahoma's defense isn't bad. I mean, I know it's a 34.5-point team total, but their defense isn't that bad. And then Henry Parrish is in a smash spot because Matt Jones is doubtful. Logan Diggs is still out. But he kind of got, pushed aside by Ulysses Bentley last week. Bentley had 11 carries. He was a more efficient back. And the thing I love about Bentley is that he's min price. So if you need a min price piece to make it work, I don't hate Bentley. And then in this wide receiver core, Trey Harris is questionable. Caden Lee is probable. Trey Harris might actually be more of a true questionable. He's been on the injury report quite a bit this year. And last week he went into the tent and then actually ended up coming back into the game, but then immediately back on the injury report. So a little bit more dicey with Harris. And again, just too expensive. So if Harris is out though, for whatever reason, Wells and Lee are kind of in smash spots here. And, I got to shout out Caden Prescorn just because I have to. Tight end, maybe the greatest tight end in the history of the college football, soon to be NFL. Washington at Indiana. ESPN game day in Bloomington. It's fun. First time ever. What a world we live in. And Indiana is a 6.5-point favorite. Never would have thought this last year facing the national runner-ups, but here we are. Runners-up. Good grammar. Washington, Will Rogers is cheap. It's about all you can say, but he's in the range of other cheap quarterbacks. We already talked about Mensa. We're going to get into a couple more later. It's hard to pull the trigger on Rogers in this situation just because, of who's around him. In the passing game, Denzel Boston and Giles Jackson are still 1A, 1B. Jackson led in targets early in the season. Boston passed him with a couple of big games. Now they're tied. I think they have the same number of targets this year. But when you're facing Indiana in a negative game script, if they're going to be passing, I don't hate it. So that's something I'm looking at. Rashid Williams has actually seen a little bit more action lately, 6 targets and a touchdown against Iowa. And Maryland and Northwestern were able to throw the ball in Indiana, so I don't see why Washington wouldn't be able to. And then Kaliki Latu sticks out a little bit because he's 6'7" and he doesn't have a touchdown yet at the tight end position. And I looked at the Nebraska game. Fedoni had 6 for 91 against Indiana. I looked at the UMD game, the Maryland game, and Dylan Wade had 3 catches and a touchdown. So, but really the fact that Kaliki Latu doesn't have a touchdown yet is kind of, that's one of those guys that variance seems like it could be coming back. On the Indiana side, the biggest news is that Curtis Rourke is out with that thumb issue. So Taven Jackson's going to start. He was decent limited time last week. Decent completion percentage last year, but he also had a pretty bad touchdown to interception ratio. Maybe this offensive system is better now with Cignetti at the helm, but we really don't have a true sample size. And he kind of falls in that no man's land at 6,600. This running game, I don't know if you guys remember the Washington-Iowa game, but Caleb Johnson ran all over this Husky team. The problem is, even Northwestern did, but the problem is we don't know necessarily what the rotation is going to be. It's been Ellison and Lawton 1A, 1B. Ellison with a little bit more of a nod in my book, and then Black and Green are still getting plenty of carries. But we don't know. In a close game, maybe we don't see those other two as much. So if you wanted to take a chance on a real gross stack here, I don't know if you stack Will Rogers with Boston and Jackson. Maybe you do. That's disgusting. And then run it back with one of these Indiana running backs, or maybe both of them if they're both going to get 15 carries. The upside is there, but you also have Surratt and Cooper, who are going to get some attention. Surratt's still clear number 1. Miles Cross had 7 targets last game, so I don't mind looking at that receiver room too. It's a pretty high total and close spread, so it's just not as high or as close as some of the other ones on the slate. So maybe this game's a little bit sneaky. It's still disgusting, but definitely sneaky. Nebraska at Ohio State, don't need to spend much time here. Everybody's cheap and for good reason. Their offense Nebraska's not good because of their offense this year. They haven't really found it yet. Ramir Johnson on Thursday, Coach Rule did just announce that he's going to be out. It tightens up the running back rotation, but how much do we really care? If you wanted to take a real gross flyer at one of these wide receivers, maybe. I feel like if Nebraska stays in this game, it's going to be their defense doing it, not necessarily their offense. But, if their defense puts them in a good field position, they could easily, get a touchdown here or there, maybe something in garbage time even. But on the Ohio State, Will Howard just flat out still too cheap, 7,900, when he legitimately has 35 to 40 point upside. The running backs, take your pick. I like Henderson because he's cheaper. But you could really go any which way here. And then we know the wide receivers of 2 favorite targets are Ibuka and Smith. Smith is an absolute stud, but Ibuka's been produced the vet. He's been producing. Carnell Tate is still in the mix. These guys down here could they score a touchdown and pay off at 3,400? Yeah. It's not quite as likely as, we know the production is going to be with these first 2 wide receivers. So not much more to say about that game. Moving on to Missouri at Alabama. Another potential blowout here. Road team is the heavy underdog. Brady Cook's not going to play, so they're without their starting quarterback. Drew Pine's going to start. Brady Cook is doubtful as at the time I'm saying this right now. So depending on when you're watching it, maybe he'll get out of the hospital and start playing again. I don't know. So respect him for that, though. Drew Pine had a flash for 1 year at Notre Dame. Hasn't really shown us much. He didn't do a whole lot last week either when he got in the game. So I don't really know if I love it. Marcus Carroll, is in a smash spot at 4,000 if Nate Noel is out. Nate Noel is out. Or no, he's doubtful too. Dang. I gotta read my notes better. But if Nate Noel doesn't play, Marcus Carroll's in a smash spot. It's just a tough opponent. I don't love targeting Alabama. I'd rather target them through the air if I'm going to target them anywhere. Although Tennessee was like, you know what? We got a good running back. We're going to run the ball. Marcus Carroll isn't Dylan Sampson, and Missouri isn't Tennessee, but you kind of catch my drift. We're also looking at Marquise Johnson on the injury report. He's probable. Mookie Cooper was just announced out later in the week. And then Brett Norfleet made his way onto the injury report Thursday as questionable. So if you care about Missouri, we'll have to watch. And then on the Alabama side, we just know where it's going to go. Ryan Williams had 19 targets last week. I don't know that I need to say anymore, other than the fact that his partner, Jeremy Bernard, is still 4,200. The disrespect. DraftKings, I don't know what else he has to do to get him in the 5Ks at least. Just do that. And then Jalen Milroe, still expensive. This backfield, I like Justice Haynes because he's the cheaper of the two backs. Both of them have decent floors and decent upside. It's just a matter of picking the right one. And it's another situation where they could both get there, but not really a game I'm looking to stack much. That'd be more disgusting than Indiana, Washington for sure. All right, here's one of the games we're looking at a little bit closer. BYU at UCF. BYU looking to remain undefeated, but the lines moved toward UCF throughout the week. And maybe it's because UCF got their S together last week and finally realized, hey, Ja'Cory Brown can run, and RJ Harvey is our stud. We need to get back to getting him the ball. He had 25 carries last week. We'll get to UCF in a sec. On the BYU side, Jake Retzlaff, no man's land in pricing. Why not just save the $100 and go down to Will Howard? Retzlaff will run a little bit. We are seeing LJ Martin get back into that workhorse role, though. So I don't mind Martin here. He had 11 carries in his first game back and then 20 carries last week. So he, after he came back from injury, is ramping up. It seems like a positive trend to me. And then Lassiter and Roberts are the target guys. They're clearly the favorite options of Retzlaff. One thing we're going to have to watch is Cody Epps. He's not marked on here for some reason, whatever. But he is questionable. He was, what did his coach say? His coach said he's listed as questionable. He'd be back for sure after the bye next week, but he might play this week. So just all that to tell you, he's probably not going to play. I don't know if you care anyway. The rest of these guys are just, they get some opportunities and you'd be taking a chance. On the UCF side, again, like I said, Ja'Cory Brown, rushing upside, 7K. He's too cheap. He threw well against Cincinnati even. He didn't against ISU, but Iowa State's a good football team. But BYU in the two true passing team, they've only, seen two true passing teams in Baylor and Arizona. So, rushing teams have had a little bit more success, i.e. Oklahoma State last week. And then Harvey, 9-2, take your pick. Like his floor's there. If he's going to get 25 carries again, count me in as, putting him in my pool. Kobe Hudson, still the target guy. But, what are we going to get out of Ja'Cory Brown? If Brown and Harvey just need to run the ball, Penny Boone's kind of disappeared a little bit. Miles Montgomery actually, I think, saw the most time behind Harvey at running back last week. So it's really Harvey and Brown. Maybe you take a shot on Hudson and then you can run it back with, any of Retzlaff, Martin, Lassiter, Roberts. I like all four of those guys, but we kind of know where the usage is going to go. Texas Tech at TCU, two teams with 30-point totals. You got to love that. Texas Tech, the 6.5-point dog, which normally you'd say, underdogs on the road, you don't like the running back, but the running back's Taj Brooks. So, he's a stud. TCU is giving up anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 yards a carry, anywhere from 167 to 289 yards per game since week 3. If you throw Utah out, I'm not counting Utah. Utah's barely a college football team right now. So Taj Brooks, 8,800, still looking at him. You get a discount from Harvey in a similar spot. In the passing game, Baron Morton, no man's land pricing. Why would you do that? Again, in a game stack, fine. I love it. If you stack him with a couple of these wide receivers. Josh Kelly is still wide receiver number 1. But Caleb Douglas, the Florida transfer, he's really started to come on. We talked about him a little bit last week. He's going to catch some eyes because he's 4,500 and he had 3 touchdowns last week. So, you do have to worry about that as far as ownership goes if you're playing that game. And then Coy Eakin is just on the field. Like he's like a, 5-6 targets a game. He's going to catch a few, might find the box. And he's the cheapest one of those top 3. So I don't mind it. Josh Hoover, he's 8,500, but his production has been there, so I don't mind that as much. Again, you put him next to Will Howard, but you can't ignore the team total. And with this running back situation, I don't know if you can play these running backs because Sonny Dykes said he's still looking for an RB1, and last time I checked, it's week 9. He said he's seen flashes from all of them. My favorite, though, is that the TCU response on Twitter is that, when have you seen a flash from Cam Cook? So Cam Cook has kind of been RB1. Jeremy Payne played punt return last game, and that was it. Trent Battle had 42 snaps last week. So you really don't know what you're going to get from this backfield until they take the field. Heck, Savion Williams was playing Wildcat. He was playing in the shotgun and running the ball. He got more carries and backfield looks than Jeremy Payne. So I don't know. Battle's 42 snaps. Cook had 26. Dominique Johnson even had 3. That's more than Jeremy Payne got. So I don't know what you're doing with this backfield. You take a shot on Trent Battle because he's cheap, maybe, if you're stacking this game, that way. Jack Besh, he was all that in a bag of chips for a while. He's kind of fallen off the last 2, but by falling off, I mean he's had 9 and 6 targets, instead of 12. So I don't mind that. We kind of already talked about Williams a little bit. If he's going to play quarterback, wide receiver, and running back, how can you not love him at 5,100? And he had 10 targets last week, so maybe he'll throw it to himself. You could always look for that. And then after that, flip a coin. Richardson, McAllister, Dabney, all these guys. Dalen Wright was back on the field last week. I think he only ran 1 route, but if he's ramping up to be set to return, he was like a top 3 or 4 wide receiver in this rotation when the season started. So definitely a stackable game. I love players from both sides in all formats, especially, like Taj Brooks, Caleb Douglas, are any format type of guys for me. Savion Williams is probably going to make that pool too. It's just, a matter of how you want to do it and, be overweight on the field if you're stacking. Illinois at Oregon. Illinois is a good football team. This just in. And Luke Altmaier is, on an early watch list for some postseason awards. So anytime you got that kind of guy at 5,700, you're going to give him a look. It's just tough because he's playing Oregon. Josh McCray did well. 33 carries the last 2 games in relief of Fagan. And then, the wide receiver room, it's Pat Bryant, Zachary Franklin. Still like Franklin more because he's 2,000 cheaper. But, Pat Bryant he's been the better wide receiver for the most part this season. But after that, you really fall off. It's just a matter of what you think they can do. Do they get up for this game against Oregon? Maybe. If you watch the Cover 3 podcast, Tom Fernelli says they're going to win by $1 billion. He called the win over Michigan last week. So, we'll see. But the Oregon side, usual suspects, Dylan Gabriel. He's just expensive. I could see him having a very similar game to a guy like Will Howard. If you want to run it, if you guys played Friday night and when they played Purdue, looked like they were off to a hot start. Jordan James snipes a couple of touchdowns at the goal line. Dylan Gabriel ends with a very suboptimal game for DFS purposes. So it just depends on what route you think to go. If you think Illinois can keep up with Oregon and keep it close, I don't mind it. Jordan James, 7,800, too cheap for what he does. Noah Whittington, I tried playing him a couple times this year and I just have not enjoyed it. Tez Johnson, still a target monster. Evan Stewart, unbelievable price. This is one of the first prices I saw that I couldn't believe. 4,200 is ridiculous. I know Trayshawn Holden's probably going to be back, but also Dan Lanning said he will be available to play, which are, everybody's least favorite words in college football, available to play. Terrence Ferguson, Lanning has kind of thrown it out there that he might play, but he had his appendix out just a couple of days before the Purdue game. So I've never had my appendix out. I did research it. I did my own, doctoral research, 1 to 3 weeks in some cases, but usually it's 2 to 4. I would err on the side of 2 to 4, but he's an athlete. His body is in pristine condition, you would think. So maybe he can come back sooner. If not, Kenyon Sadiq filled in very nicely and he's 3,200. So definitely some pieces from this wide receiver core you can play. Maryland at Minnesota. Minnesota, a 4.5 point favorite. Billy Edwards at 7,700. He's a good quarterback, man. I just don't know if you can throw against Minnesota. The thing is like their 2 best throwing teams they've faced are USC and UCLA. So I don't know what kind of sample size you get from that. But they kept Miller Moss, I think, at like 200 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns. I don't remember exactly. Garbers has maybe shown he's actually a good quarterback the last few weeks. So I don't mind the game they had against him too much. But if you are going to attack him, you can attack him through the run a little bit. Roman Hemby, still in that price range where he's 5,300. I don't mind it. But actually, like, he didn't do much last week, and Nolan Ray actually got a little bit more run. But again, I think I'd rather attack Minnesota through the ground, like Caleb Johnson. Again, Caleb Johnson's a different animal, though, so I don't know what you can take from that. Ty Felton, though, still a target machine. 8,800 is tough. Caden Prather, I'd much rather pay for because, I mean, he's going to get a lot more looks because he had the big game last week. He started the week at 3,200, even 5,200, still too cheap. One thing I'm looking at, though, is even Octavian Smith had 10 targets last week. So if you want like a 0.5% owned wide receiver that could get 10 targets and possibly, 6 catches for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, Octavian Smith. I don't love it, but sometimes you got to get gross to win those contests. On the Minnesota side, there's actually quite a few plays here. Max Brosmer, 5,000. Again, he's started getting better as the season has gone on. He looks more comfortable in the pocket. He is poised, and he's a big reason they beat USC and UCLA. So I'm at 5,000. You're definitely giving him a look. Darius Taylor is who the offense goes through. He is second on the team in targets and obviously first on the team in carries and most yards rushing, and he's played one fewer game than everybody else. So that's all you really need to know about Darius Taylor. He is in pure Darius Taylor form, and he's cheaper than Taj Brooks and RJ Harvey. And then in this wide receiver room, Daniel Jackson, 9 targets or more in 4 of the last 5 games. He's only 4,500. He has become Max Brosmer's favorite target, just like he was for Callie McManus last year. So especially like if Brosmer is in your pool, then you almost have to put Jackson in there too if you're going to stack this game. I don't mind a Brosmer Jackson running back with Hemby or even Brosmer Taylor Jackson, because those are just the 3 guys that the usage is going to go through for Minnesota. It's disgusting. I'm not suggesting that you do it by any means. Just it's there and it's pretty cheap. Oregon State of California, 10-point spread. Oregon State coming in as the underdog. Giovanni McCoy, another underpriced quarterback. He will do some rushing. He's brought, Jam Miller's out, or Jam Griffin is out. Jam Miller's playing for Alabama. Jam Griffin is out. And since Jam Griffin has gone out, McCoy has kind of stepped up his game. And the running side of things, and Anthony Hagerson, the Colorado transfer, I think he transferred from like 2 other places too. He's been a workhorse and a half, 26, 28, and 17 carries in his last 3 games. The next closest is Alla behind him with 7 over those same 3 games combined. It's because it's Hankerson is RB1, McCoy's RB2. And when they do throw, Trent Walker has 46 more targets than the next closest guy to him. That next closest guy to him, though, is Darius Clemens with 23. But he missed 3 games. So his usage has been just condensed. Same thing with the tight end Jermaine Terrier. He only has 18 targets on the season, but that's all been condensed to the last 3 games. Even Taz Reddix, who has he saw 5 targets last week. Jeremiah Noga had 9 targets a game before. So, it's Walker into Clemens for me, but, you could mix in those super cheap guys too if you decide this game could shoot out. On the California side, Fernando Mendoza has been running a little bit more lately. I don't mind that. Running QBs against Oregon State, Dylan Gabriel had 64-1. Brennan Lewis at Nevada had 151-1. Haj Malik at UNLV had 65-2. So if Mendoza does get his legs under him for this game, don't hate it. And then Jaden Ott, we'll just have to see if he plays. He's been practicing. He's on track to play. Oregon State gives up 6.1 yards per carry. It's an absolute smash spot for him if he can go and he's 100%. In this wide receiver room, tight end Jack Endries has been the recent receiver of choice. Maybe that's because Corey Dyches is out. But Mendoza's building that relationship with Endries. And then Nazai Hunter, Jonathan Brady still there. Tobias Merriweather, the Notre Dame transfer, has also been practicing this week. Could see his first action of the season. But why would you pay $4,200 for a guy who's playing in his first game when you have cheaper guys that are, already building that relationship with Mendoza? But you never know. And then Josiah Martin, 3-star freshman, a top 100 receiver recruit, ran 25 routes and had 5 catches on 5 targets last week. So it's a freshman who's getting his legs underneath him mid-season. Don't mind it. Texas at Vanderbilt. Texas projected to blow them out. Quinn Ewers, 8,700. How many times do I have to tell you? I'm not doing it. I won't do it. I'll play Quinn Ewers when he's 6,500. So that way he can get me 3x. One thing I will say is Trey Wisner is kind of taking over this backfield. And he's the cheaper back between he and Blue. Now I will say Blue, I don't even know if he had a carry last week or just a couple, but he did have quite a few catches and got work done in the passing game. So that still leaves Blue on the table for me. Isaiah Bond has been downgraded to doubtful. And now Wisner's not on the injury report anymore. So we'll see. If that ends up being the case, depending on when you're watching this, he might already be out. But usually when the player goes from questionable Wednesday to doubtful on Thursday, what the next step is. He's probably going to be out. That leaves the room open for Matthew Golden, Ryan Wingo. It makes DeAndre Moore and Jonte Cook more viable. Gunnar Helm, the tight end, he's been smashing lately, and he's only 3,300. So, it's one of those things that I'll take a chance on those cheap guys. Ryan Wingo is, he's a freshman, but he's getting a little bit more work. And then Vanderbilt side, it's just Diego Pavia. He's got that effect. I call it the Diego Pavia effect. I'm very creative, in case you didn't know. But we saw what he did against Alabama. He's only 7,200. He's right in that price range where I'm going to consider him. Cedric Alexander and Eli Stowers have been both upgraded to probable. So that's good news. Usually when you go from Wednesday to probable on Thursday, then the next step is play. But, the only thing is that they're cheap. So I don't really know what I'm going to do with Vanderbilt yet, but I don't know that we're in for another upset. I do love that they're keeping the net up, though. I do love that. Smart kids trolling is very, very fun. So that does it for the slate. One other thing I wanted to mention, Illinois traveling 2 time zones, not 3. BYU traveling also 2 time zones, not 3. But then you have Washington and Indiana. Washington's traveling 3 time zones. Usually doesn't work out too well. So if you're into that narrative, then you probably like Indiana a lot. But yeah, that's going to do it for the slate. If you like that stone but want it to be more colorful and give you more information, here it is. And I noticed I should have checked before I opened this one. This is an old one. So this doesn't even give you all the information that we have now. So you still get, if it's a cash, high upside GPP, what kind of game environment we think it's going to be if guys are injured or on the injury report. But we've also added, you know what? I'll just show you a little sneak peek here. We've also added the pace of play, pass defense, run pass percentage, targets per game, rushes per game. I'm not supposed to do that, but I opened the wrong stone. So that's on me. A little sneak peek for you. But all the information on one stone. How do I get that stone, Bill? Go to SHIPITNation.com. Join the nation. The best deal in all of sports. If you want to play every sport, it's $700 for the entire year. If you want to try it, it's $25 or $24 for a week. Just compare to the other sites. Our motto at SHIPIT is that we want you to, one of our mottos, I think we come up with a new motto every week, but it's, we want you to pay for your contests, not your content. So we want to give you an affordable price, and we also give you the option for an optimizer. So right now, all access is a time to get in. I'll be honest with you, because NFL is still going, college football, obviously. PGA, we're in the swing season. NBA just started up. We've already had some big winners on the NBA and in the NHL, and MMA crushes every single week. Baseball's still going on with the World Series showdowns. If you only want one of those sports, we got that too. Look, you could do football, you could do PGA, or you could do it with an optimizer. These 2 are bread and butter sports. So these are 2 individual ones you can get, but guess what? Football comes with both NFL and college. And obviously you like college football, you're watching this show. Makes sense. Very affordable. Look at this. These are the people who are in our nation that did it. Look at Hebrew Cheetah, our boy Rio, with $100,000 last week. It's amazing how many times we see, big numbers in the green and little numbers in the black or white, I guess, depending on what mode you have your DraftKings in. But there's winners every week. It's not just the people in charge. It's not just the moderators. It's all of our members. And we love celebrating in our Discord with the community. And, that just leads me to one of my favorite parts about being with SHIPIT Nation is the community we have in Discord. Last week, we were sweating for about a half an hour if $3,200 Hal Presley was actually going to play or not, even though he was out on the field. And then the dude didn't do anything for like the first 2.5 quarters, but he got a touchdown. And then we were all happy. But it was the most ridiculous sweat. I had no service in Northeast Wisconsin. And I sweat to begin with, no matter what. So imagine me having no service, trying to figure out if this receiver was going to play. Plus, I'm already a sweaty human. I'm glad I was with people that I'm close with. It wasn't a sight to see. But all that to say is that we have an amazing community. We love having conversations. We love, throwing ideas off of each other and just, growing ourselves and getting better at DFS together. And that brings me to rule number 1, which is college football is fun. Enjoy the process. Enjoy building your lineups. Enjoy watching college football, and enjoy just the fact that we have the privilege of doing this every single week, every weekend, football Saturdays, football Sundays, and just enjoy it, and hopefully climb to the top of the leaderboard, and hopefully even more. I see you there. Have a great week, everybody.